The courthouse smelled of old wood and broken promises. I stood in the marble hallway, my arms aching from the weight of the carrier where my 3-month-old daughter slept, oblivious to the world that was about to shatter around us. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving, casting shadows that made everyone look like ghosts. My reflection in the polished floor showed a woman I barely recognized. Hollow-eyed, thinner than I'd ever been, wearing a clearance rack dress that hung loose on my frame. I'd tried to look presentable, to have some dignity for this moment, but exhaustion had won. It always did these days. The baby stirred, making those small sounds that meant she'd wake soon, hungry and demanding in the way only infants could be. I swayed automatically, a motion that had become as natural as breathing. 3 months of sleepless nights, of doing this alone, of watching my bank account dwindle to almost nothing. 3 months since I'd discovered the truth about Marco, my husband, the man I'd loved with everything I had, the man who'd promised me forever and given me exactly 3 years before discarding me like trash. Room 304, Family Court Division. The numbers swam in my vision as I approached the heavy oak door. Through the small window, I could see him already sitting inside with his lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who probably cost more per hour than I made in a week at the diner. Marco looked good. He always looked good. Dark hair, perfectly styled, suit that probably cost more than my rent, that easy smile he'd given me on our first date, back when I'd believed in fairy tales. And next to him, draped over him like expensive perfume, was her, Valentina Corso. I'd seen her pictures on social media, had tortured myself scrolling through images of them together at restaurants I could never afford, parties in penthouses I'd never visit. She was everything I wasn't, polished, elegant, with that effortless beauty that came from money and time, and never having to worry about choosing between diapers and groceries. Her red dress probably cost more than my car. Her laugh, even muffled through the door, sounded like champagne bubbles. My hand shook as I reached for the handle. This was it. The end of everything I'd built my life around. The death of every dream I'd had since I was 16, and Marco had walked into the convenience store where I worked, buying cigarettes and giving me a smile that made my heart forget how to beat properly. I pushed open the door. The room fell silent. Marco's laugh died mid-sound, his face going slack in a way I'd never seen before. Valentina's smile froze, her eyes dropping to the carrier in my arms, then back to Marco, confusion flickering across her perfect features. "Sorry I'm late," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Traffic was bad. That was a lie. I'd been sitting in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, trying to gather the courage to walk in here, trying to prepare myself to sign the papers that would legally erase the biggest mistake of my life. The judge, a tired-looking woman in her 50s with gray streaking her dark hair, glanced up from her paperwork, her expression softening when she saw the baby. "Mrs. DeLuca, please take a seat." Mrs. DeLuca, not for much longer. I moved toward the empty chair on the opposite side of the table from Marco and his lawyer, my daughter's carrier bumping against my hip. The baby chose that moment to wake, her face scrunching up in that way that meant she'd start crying soon. I set the carrier down carefully, my fingers fumbling with the straps to pull her out before she could work herself into a full wail. "You brought a baby to divorce proceedings?" Marco's lawyer, Mr. Patterson, I remembered, looked affronted, as if I'd committed some grave breach of etiquette. "She's 3 months old," I said, settling my daughter against my shoulder, feeling her root against my neck, looking for food. "I can't exactly leave her at home alone." Marco hadn't moved. He was staring at me. No, at the baby, with an expression I couldn't read. His face had gone pale beneath his tan, and his hands, I noticed, were gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles had gone white. "Marco." Valentina's voice was sharp, pitched low but audible in the small room. "What is this?" He didn't answer her. His eyes, those dark eyes I'd once loved more than anything, were fixed on my daughter's face, on the small hand that had escaped her blanket and was waving in the air. The judge cleared her throat. "Shall we proceed? I have the dissolution of marriage petition filed by Mr. DeLuca 3 months ago. Both parties have waived the waiting period and agreed to an uncontested divorce with separate property." "When was she born?" Marco's voice cut through the judge's words like a knife through silk. It was rough, raw in a way I'd never heard it before. I looked at him directly for the first time since entering the room. February 14th, Valentine's Day. Ironic, isn't it? 3 months ago. His voice was flat now, emotionless. I filed for divorce 3 months ago. Yes. I shifted the baby to my other shoulder, trying to soothe her growing fussiness. I got the papers in the hospital. You have excellent timing. Valentina's perfectly manicured hand landed on Marco's arm. Marco, what is she talking about? Who is this woman? His wife, I supplied helpfully, meeting her shocked gaze. Well, for another few minutes at least. Gianna DeLuca, though I'll be going back to Moretti after this. I paused, then added, and this is Lucia, his daughter. The silence that followed was so complete. I could hear the clock on the wall ticking, could hear someone walking past in the hallway outside, could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Marco stood up so abruptly, his chair scraped against the floor with a sound like a scream. That's not... You can't... Can't what? Something hot and bitter rose in my throat, months of pain and anger and exhaustion bubbling up all at once. Can't prove she's yours? I have the DNA test in my bag if you want to see it. Can't believe you'd have a child with me? Why not? We were married, Marco. We had sex. This is what happens. You told me you were on birth control. His voice was accusatory now, and I saw Valentina flinch beside him. I was. My daughter started to cry in earnest now, her small face turning red. I stood, bouncing her automatically, years of maternal instinct packed into 3 short months. 99% effective isn't 100%. Congratulations. You're in the lucky 1%. The judge was watching this exchange with the weariness of someone who'd seen too many families implode in this room. Perhaps we should take a short recess. No. I surprised myself with the firmness in my voice. No, let's just get this over with. He wants a divorce. I'm here to give him one. I don't want anything from him. No alimony, no child support, nothing. He can sign away his parental rights while we're at it. We'll be fine on our own. That was a lie, too. I had $300 in my checking account. I was 2 months behind on rent, and my car was making a sound that promised an expensive repair I couldn't afford. But I'd figure it out. I always did. Gianna! Marco started, but I cut him off. Don't say my name like that. Don't look at me like I'm the one who did something wrong here. My voice cracked, and I hated myself for it, hated the tears that were threatening to fall. You want to know when I found out I was pregnant? 3 days after I found the messages on your phone. 3 days after I discovered you'd been sleeping with her for 6 months while I was planning our future, picking out baby names for children I thought we'd have together someday. I saw Valentina's face go white, saw her hand slip from Marco's arm. I found out I was pregnant on the same day I found out my marriage was a lie. I continued, the words pouring out now like blood from a wound. And you know what the worst part was? For about 5 minutes I was happy. For 5 stupid, naive minutes, I thought maybe a baby would fix everything. Maybe you'd come home and love me again. The baby was screaming now, her cries echoing off the walls. I couldn't calm her, couldn't calm myself. Everything was falling apart, and I couldn't stop it. But you filed for divorce instead, I finished, my voice barely a whisper beneath my daughter's wails. So here I am. Let's sign the papers and end this. The door to the courtroom burst open. 3 men in black suits entered, moving with a precision that made my skin prickle with warning. They weren't lawyers. Something about the way they carried themselves, the way their eyes swept the room cataloging exits and threats, screamed danger. The one in front was older, gray at his temples, with a scar running from his eyebrow to his cheekbone. He looked at Marco with an expression of profound disappointment. We need to leave, he said. Now. Marco's face had gone from pale to ashen. Salvatore, this isn't... The Constantines know about the shipment. The man, Salvatore, said quietly. 3 of our warehouses burned last night. They're sending a message. We need to move you and Miss Corso to the safe house until... He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes landing on me and the baby for the first time. The air in the room changed. It was like watching a switch flip, watching this dangerous man's entire demeanor shift from urgency to something else. something cold and calculating that made my stomach drop. "Who is this?" he asked, his voice soft now, which somehow made it more terrifying. "No one," Marco said quickly. "My ex-wife. We're just with your child." It wasn't a question. Salvatore's eyes, dark and knowing, moved from my face to Lucia's, then back to Marco. "Your daughter." "It's complicated. It's very simple, actually." A new voice came from the doorway, and I felt the temperature in the room plummet. The man who entered made everyone else in the room look small. He wasn't extraordinarily tall, maybe 6 feet. But he carried himself like he owned not just the room, but the entire building, the city, the world. His suit was black, perfectly tailored, and probably cost more than my entire year's salary. Dark hair, sharp features, and eyes that seemed to see straight through me. He looked at the scene before him, Marco and Valentina, me and the baby, the judge frozen behind her desk, and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Marco De Luca," he said, his voice carrying an accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, but refined, educated, with an undertone of violence that made my pulse spike. "Caught between wives. How very common." "Mr. Dante," Marco breathed, and I heard fear in his voice. Real, genuine fear. I can explain." "Can you?" The man, Dante, moved further into the room, and I noticed how everyone seemed to shrink away from him, how even Salvatore stepped aside respectfully. "Explain how you stole from my family? Explain how you thought you could skim money from our shipments, and we wouldn't notice? Explain how you've been feeding information to the Constantines?" The words washed over me like ice water. Stole, shipments, Constantines. The pieces clicked together in my mind with horrifying clarity. Marco wasn't just a businessman like he'd told me. He wasn't just managing a import-export company. He was a criminal, a thief. And he'd stolen from someone very, very dangerous. "I didn't," Marco started, but Dante raised one hand and he fell silent immediately. $2 million, Dante said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "That's what you took. And now the Constantines are at war with us because of the intelligence you sold them." He paused, his eyes moving around the room before landing on me. "The standard punishment for such betrayal is death, for you and everyone connected to you." My arms tightened around Lucia automatically, my body moving to shield her even as my mind screamed at me to run. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at this man who held life and death in his hands like they were nothing. His gaze lingered on the baby, something flickering across his face too quickly for me to read. Then he looked at Marco again. "But it seems you've complicated the situation," he said softly, "by bringing innocent blood into this mess." The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to fall. Dante's eyes moved from Marco to me, a slow, deliberate assessment that made my skin crawl. I'd never felt so exposed, so vulnerable. My daughter had finally quieted against my shoulder, her small body warm and trusting, completely unaware that we'd just walked into something far more dangerous than a simple divorce. "Mrs. De Luca." His voice was smooth, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. "How long have you been separated from your husband?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. 3 months. Since he filed for divorce. "And the child?" "She's 3 months old." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I was 7 months pregnant when he left." Something dark passed over Dante's features. He turned to Marco, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. "You abandoned your pregnant wife." It wasn't a question, but Marco answered anyway, his words tumbling over each other. The marriage was already over." "Was it?" Dante's voice cut through Marco's excuses like a blade. "Or did you simply decide it was over when you found something prettier?" His gaze flicked to Valentina, who had pressed herself against the wall, her perfect makeup unable to hide her terror. "Miss Corso. The daughter of Judge Corso, if I'm not mistaken. How convenient for Marco to have a lover whose father could make certain legal troubles disappear." Valentina made a small sound, somewhere between a whimper and a gasp. "Please," Marco said, and I'd never heard him beg before. This has nothing to do with them. Gianna and the baby. They're not part of this. They don't know anything. Precisely. Dante moved closer to me, and every instinct I had screamed at me to back away, to run, to protect my daughter. But my legs wouldn't move. She knows nothing. She's innocent. And yet, because of your stupidity, her life is now in danger. What? The word escaped me before I could stop it. Dante's eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw something in them that might have been regret or pity. Neither option was comforting. The Constantines don't care about innocence, he said quietly. They care about revenge. Marco betrayed my family, which means war. And in war, everyone connected to the traitor becomes a target. You, your child, your parents if you have them, your friends, anyone who might be used as leverage or punishment. The room spun. I clutched Lucia tighter, feeling her heartbeat against my chest, steady and trusting. But I left him. I'm divorcing him. I don't want anything to do with him. They won't care. Salvatore spoke up from behind Dante, his scarred face grim. They'll see you as his wife, his child as his blood. That makes you both collateral. This is insane. My voice rose, panic finally breaking through the shock. I didn't do anything. I don't even know what he did. I thought he managed shipping logistics for a legitimate company. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. Dante's voice held a strange note, almost like approval. You were the perfect little wife, weren't you? Believing his lies, keeping his house, waiting for him to come home while he built his empire on stolen money and betrayal. The words stung because they were true. I had been that naive, that trusting. I'd believed every lie, every excuse for late nights and business trips. I'd been so desperately in love that I'd ignored every red flag. What do you want from me? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Dante studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to Marco. $2 million. You have 72 hours to return what you stole, plus interest. 20%, compounded monthly since you began your theft. That brings your debt to approximately $3 million. Marco's face went gray. I don't have that kind of money. I spent it. Investments. The apartment. Then you'll liquidate everything you own. Dante's voice was flat, final. The penthouse, the cars, the offshore accounts I know you have. Everything. And if you're still short, you'll work it off. 5 years of service to my family, doing exactly what I tell you, when I tell you. And if I refuse, the smile Dante gave him was terrifying in its pleasantness. Then I'll kill you here and now, and your daughter will grow up knowing her father died a thief and a coward. His eyes slid to Valentina. And Miss Corso will learn that loving the wrong man has consequences. You can't... Valentina started. But Salvatore moved toward her and she fell silent, pressing harder against the wall. I can do whatever I want, Dante said mildly. That's what power means, Miss Corso. Something you'll understand soon enough, since you're now part of this mess, too. He turned back to me, and I saw him really look at my daughter for the first time. Lucia had fallen asleep again, her small fist curled against my collarbone, completely peaceful. Something crossed Dante's face. Surprise, maybe, or something softer that disappeared too quickly to name. How old did you say she was? 3 months. I couldn't keep the protective edge from my voice. 12 weeks, exactly. And you've been alone this entire time? No help from Marco? No support? I lifted my chin, finding some shred of pride in the wreckage of my life. I don't need his help. I have a job. I have an apartment. We're fine. Where do you work? The question was asked casually, but nothing about this man was casual. Every word felt like a test. Every answer a potential trap. Ruby's Diner on 5th Street, I said. I waitress. Night shifts mostly, so my neighbor can watch Lucia while she sleeps. And during the day? I sleep when she sleeps, when she lets me. I knew I sounded defensive, but I didn't care. I'm managing. Are you? His gaze moved over me, cataloging details I wished he couldn't see. The dark circles under my eyes, the way my clothes hung loose, the tremor in my hands from exhaustion and fear. You look like you haven't slept properly in months. When was the last time you ate a full meal? I eat. Another lie. I ate whatever was left over at the diner, whatever I could afford after paying for formula and diapers and the mounting stack of medical bills from Lucia's birth. Mr. Dante, the judge interjected, her voice carefully neutral. This is highly irregular. If you're planning to conduct business, perhaps... You'll wait, Dante said without looking at her. This concerns me now. The judge subsided immediately, and I realized with growing horror just how much power this man wielded. A judge, in her own courtroom, was afraid of him. I have a proposition for you, Mrs. DeLuca. Dante moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Expensive, subtle, something dark and woodsy that probably cost more than my rent. Your husband owes me $3 million and 5 years of his life. His mistress is now a liability that needs to be contained, and you and your daughter are targets for my enemies because of his stupidity. I don't see how that's a proposition, I said, my heart hammering. That sounds like a death sentence. It would be if I were a cruel man. His lips curved slightly. But I believe in justice, Mrs. DeLuca, in balance. Marco created this mess, and Marco will pay for it. But you and your child, you're innocent. You deserve protection. Protection from who? From you? From everyone. He gestured to Salvatore. My enemies are now your enemies, whether you like it or not. The Constantines have eyes everywhere. They already know Marco has a wife and child. My sources confirm they've been watching this courthouse, waiting for him to appear. You walked in here publicly with his daughter. They saw you. Ice flooded my veins. You're saying they'll come after us? I'm saying they're probably planning it right now. Dante's voice was matter-of-fact, as if discussing something mundane. They'll wait until you leave, follow you home, and then they'll take you. Use you as leverage against Marco, against me, and when they're done with you, he let the sentence hang, unfinished. My arms tightened around Lucia until she stirred, making a small sound of protest. What do you want from me? I want to protect you, he said it simply, as if it was obvious. I want to move you somewhere safe, somewhere the Constantines can't reach you. I want to give you resources, money, security, everything you need to raise your daughter without fear. Why? The question burst out of me. Why would you do that? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Because you're innocent. His eyes held mine, dark and intense. Because that child is innocent. And because I have a code, Mrs. DeLuca. I punish the guilty and protect the innocent. Always. There's a catch. There had to be. Men like him didn't offer help without expecting something in return. There is. He didn't deny it. You'll live in one of my properties, under my protection. You'll follow the security protocols my people set. You'll accept my help, my money, my guards, and in return, you'll be safe. That's it? I just let you control my life? I prefer the term protect. His voice was dry. But yes, essentially, for as long as the threat exists, and Mrs. DeLuca, I need you to understand, with the Constantines, that threat could be years. They hold grudges the way other people hold memories. I looked at Marco, at the man I'd loved, the man who'd destroyed everything. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Valentina was crying silently, mascara tracking down her perfect face. The judge sat frozen behind her desk, a spectator to her own courtroom being taken over. And if I refuse? I asked, turning back to Dante. Then I'll have Salvatore escort you to your car, and you'll drive away from here. His voice was gentle, which somehow made the words worse. And sometime in the next few days, the Constantines will find you. And I'll read about it in the newspaper. Young mother and infant found dead. Tragic murder-suicide, the police will say, though we'll both know the truth. You're threatening me. I'm telling you the reality of the situation your husband created. Dante's voice hardened slightly. I didn't make this world, Mrs. DeLuca. I just survive in it. And I'm offering you the same chance. Lucia began to fuss again, her small face scrunching up. She was hungry, I could tell. It had been almost 3 hours since her last feeding. My breasts ached, milk beginning to let down at her sounds. Everything felt surreal. Standing in this courtroom, holding my daughter, discussing my life like it was a business transaction with a man who could order my death as easily as ordering coffee. How do I know you won't hurt us? I asked quietly. How do I know this isn't just another cage? Something flickered across Dante's face, too quick to read. You don't. You'll have to trust me. Trust a mob boss? The words escaped before I could stop them, and I saw Salvatore tense, saw Marco close his eyes in despair. But Dante laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, but genuine. Smart girl. You shouldn't trust me. You shouldn't trust anyone in this world. His expression sobered, but I'm the only option you have that ends with you and your daughter alive. So I suggest you take it. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence. Lucia's fussing grew more insistent. My whole body ached with exhaustion and fear and the weight of a decision I never should have had to make. Fine, I heard myself say. I'll accept your protection. Gianna, no, Marco started. But I cut him off with a look. You don't get to have an opinion anymore, I said coldly. You did this. You brought this into our lives. You destroyed everything. And now I have to clean up your mess. I turned to Dante. When do we leave? Now. He gestured to Salvatore. My men will take you to your apartment. You'll pack what you need, quickly, and then we'll move you to a secure location. I have to work tonight. My shift starts at 6. You don't work at Ruby's Diner anymore, Dante said firmly. You don't work anywhere. Your only job now is to stay alive and raise your daughter. I'll handle everything else. But I can't just... The rent, my neighbor, my things will all be taken care of. His voice brooked no argument. Salvatore will handle the logistics. You just need to pack clothes, personal items, anything important. We leave in 1 hour. It was happening too fast. Everything was spinning out of control, and I couldn't catch my breath. Couldn't think. The divorce. We'll wait, Dante said. Right now, your legal marital status is the least of your concerns. He was right. God help me. He was right. I looked at the judge, who nodded slowly, seeming almost relieved to have this chaos removed from her courtroom. What about Marco? I couldn't help asking. And her? Marco will be coming with us, Dante said, his voice cooling. He has work to do, debts to pay. As for Miss Corso, he looked at Valentina with something like distaste. She's compromised now, too. The Constantines know about her, know she was involved with Marco. She'll need protection as well, though she'll be housed separately. Lucky me, I muttered, then immediately regretted the bitterness in my voice. But Dante smiled slightly, a real smile this time. Indeed. Lucky you, inheriting your husband's debts and his enemies all in one morning. He glanced at his watch. Expensive, gold, probably worth more than my car. We're wasting time. Salvatore, take Mrs. DeLuca and the child to the vehicle. I'll handle things here. Salvatore moved toward me, his scarred face not unkind. Come with me, signora. I'll keep you safe. I stood on shaking legs, adjusting Lucia in my arms. She was crying now, really crying, hunger making her frantic. I need to feed her soon. There's a bottle in the car, Salvatore said. We anticipated you might need supplies. They'd been watching me, planning this. The realization should have terrified me, but I was beyond fear now, running on pure adrenaline and instinct. I walked toward the door, past Marco who tried to reach for me. I jerked away from his touch, disgust rising in my throat. Don't. You don't get to touch me ever again. Gianna, I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. I looked at him one last time, at the man I'd loved, the man who'd fathered my child, the man who'd sold us all out for money and a pretty face. You destroyed us. I hope it was worth it. I walked out of the courtroom without looking back, following Salvatore down the hallway. Behind me, I heard Dante's voice, cold and final. Marco, we need to discuss your payment plan and Miss Corso. You'll come with me. We have much to talk about. The courthouse that had smelled of broken promises when I entered now smelled like the beginning of something else entirely, something dark and dangerous and utterly inescapable. My old life had ended in that courtroom. And whatever came next, whatever cage I'd just agreed to walk into, there was no going back now. The car was nothing like I expected. I'd pictured something ostentatious, a limousine maybe, or one of those oversized SUVs that screamed money and danger. Instead, Salvatore led me to a black sedan, sleek and elegant, but not flashy. The kind of car that would blend into traffic without drawing attention. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside, and when he opened the back door for me, I noticed how thick the glass was. Bulletproof. The reality of what I'd agreed to hit me like a physical blow. "Please, Signora," Salvatore said gently, gesturing to the interior. "We need to move quickly." I slid into the back seat, the leather soft and expensive beneath me. The car smelled new, with an underlying scent of gun oil that made my stomach clench. A baby seat was already installed on the opposite side, properly secured, with a bottle warmer plugged into the console and a small cooler beside it. They'd thought of everything, planned for this. How long had they been watching me? Salvatore got into the driver's seat as another man, younger, with hard eyes and a gun visible in his shoulder holster, took the passenger seat. Neither spoke as we pulled away from the courthouse. Through the tinted windows, I watched the building recede, taking with it any illusion of normalcy my life might have had left. Lucia was screaming now, her face red and furious with hunger. My milk had let down completely, soaking through my dress, adding humiliation to fear. With shaking hands, I tried to settle her, tried to figure out the bottle warmer while she thrashed in my arms. "Here, let me." The man in the passenger seat, he couldn't have been more than 25, turned around and took the bottle from me with surprising gentleness. "My sister has twins. I know the drill." He tested the temperature on his wrist, then handed it back. "Should be good now." "Thank you," I whispered, guiding the nipple to Lucia's mouth. She latched on desperately, her cries cutting off as she drank. The silence felt enormous. "I'm Nico," the young man said. "I'll be part of your security detail. That's Salvatore, obviously. You'll meet the others at the house." "How many others?" 4 more, rotating shifts. 2 on duty at all times, 1 on perimeter, 1 close protection. He said it matter-of-factly, as if having 6 armed guards was normal. "Mr. Dante takes protection seriously." I noticed. I looked down at my daughter, at her small face finally peaceful as she ate. "Where are we going?" "Your apartment first," Salvatore said from the front, his eyes meeting mine in the rear-view mirror. "You have 15 minutes to pack. Take only what's essential. Clothes, documents, medications, personal items. We'll provide everything else. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She watches Lucia sometimes. I need to tell her." "We'll handle it," Nico interrupted gently. "You can't contact anyone directly. Not until we know it's safe." The isolation of it struck me then. I'd be cut off from everything, everyone I knew. Not that there were many people. I'd lost most of my friends when Marco left. Too embarrassed to explain, too exhausted to maintain relationships. But Mrs. Chen, the kind widow who'd brought me soup after Lucia was born, who'd stayed up with me on the bad nights when I thought I couldn't do this alone, she deserved better than just disappearing. "She'll worry," I said quietly. "We'll tell her you had to leave town for a family emergency," Salvatore said. "She'll understand." Another lie. My life was becoming a series of lies, stacked on top of each other until I couldn't remember what truth looked like anymore. The drive to my apartment took 20 minutes through midday traffic. I lived in a rundown building in a neighborhood that was trying to be up and coming, but mostly just looked tired. Salvatore parked in front, and I saw him scan the street carefully before nodding to Nico. "I'll take her up," Nico said. "You stay with the car." My apartment was on the 3rd floor, no elevator. I'd climbed these stairs hundreds of times, usually with groceries or laundry, or Lucia's carrier weighing down my arms. Now I climbed them with Nico behind me, his hand resting casually near his gun, his eyes constantly moving. The door to 3B looked more shabby than usual, the paint peeling, the numbers slightly crooked. Inside, my apartment was exactly as I'd left it that morning. A disaster. Dishes in the sink, laundry draped over the couch, toys scattered across the floor, the bassinet in the corner where Lucia slept, the changing table I'd bought at a thrift store, the single photograph on the wall of me and Marco on our wedding day, both of us smiling like we had forever. 15 minutes, Nico reminded me gently. "I'll get you a suitcase." He found my battered luggage in the closet while I stood in the middle of my tiny apartment, Lucia drowsy and milk-drunk in my arms, trying to figure out how to pack a life in 15 minutes. Documents first. I grabbed Lucia's birth certificate, my own documents, my passport that I'd never used because Marco had always been too busy for the honeymoon he'd promised. Medical records, the envelope with the DNA test I'd paid for, proof that Marco couldn't deny his daughter. My small jewelry box, nothing valuable, but my grandmother's ring was in there. The only thing I had left of her. Clothes next. I threw things into the suitcase without folding, without thinking. Jeans, shirts, underwear, nursing bras, Lucia's tiny outfits, so small they barely seemed real. Diapers, wipes, the stuffed rabbit Mrs. Chen had given her. "Signora, we need to go," Nico said, after what felt like seconds but must have been close to 15 minutes. "Wait." I grabbed the photo off the wall, then hesitated. Did I really want to take this with me? This lie of a marriage? This proof of my stupidity? I left it on the counter, face down. Nico carried the suitcase while I carried Lucia, now completely asleep, milk-drunk, and unaware that we were leaving the only home she'd ever known. In the hallway, I saw Mrs. Chen's door crack open, her weathered face peering out. "Gianna? Where are you going with that young man?" I opened my mouth to lie, to tell her the story Salvatore had prepared. But the words stuck in my throat. She'd been so kind to me, so patient with my midnight knocking when I was desperate and didn't know how to make Lucia stop crying. "Family emergency," I managed. "I have to go out of town for a while." Her eyes, sharp despite her age, moved from me to Nico to the gun barely concealed under his jacket. Understanding flickered across her face, and fear. "You take care of yourself," she said quietly. "And that baby. You hear me?" "I will." My voice cracked. "Thank you. For everything." She nodded once and closed her door. I heard the locks engage, multiple bolts sliding home. She knew. Somehow she knew this wasn't a family emergency, that I was in trouble, and she was protecting herself the only way she could. The drive from my apartment took us out of the city, into suburbs I'd never visited, then further into neighborhoods where the houses got progressively larger, the walls progressively higher. We drove for almost an hour, and with each passing mile, I felt my old life falling further away. Finally, Salvatore turned onto a private road, stopping at a gate that looked like it belonged to a fortress. Cameras everywhere, intercom system, walls topped with something that might have been decorative ironwork, but looked suspiciously like security measures. The gate opened silently, and we drove through into what looked like another world. The house, no, the estate, was enormous. 3 stories of stone and glass, surrounded by manicured gardens and what looked like a small forest for privacy. Other buildings dotted the property, a guest house maybe, a garage large enough for a dozen cars, something that might have been a security station. "Welcome to your new home, Signora," Salvatore said, pulling up to the main entrance. The door opened before we could knock, and a woman in her 50s appeared, elegant, composed, with kind eyes that reminded me of my mother. "Mrs. DeLuca, welcome. I'm Elena, the house manager. Let me help you with the baby." She reached for Lucia with practiced ease, and I found myself handing over my daughter to this stranger, because my arms were shaking too badly to hold her safely. Elena cooed at Lucia, speaking softly in Italian, while Nico brought in my pathetic suitcase. The interior of the house was like something from a magazine. Marble floors, high ceilings, artwork that was probably worth more than I'd earned in my entire life. A grand staircase swept upward, and I could see rooms branching off in every direction, each one probably larger than my entire apartment. "Your rooms are on the 2nd floor, Elena said, still cradling Lucia like she'd done this 1,000 times before. "East wing, away from the main activity of the house. I thought you'd prefer privacy and quiet for the baby." "Thank you," I whispered, because what else could I say? She led me upstairs, down a hallway lined with more expensive art, to a suite of rooms that took my breath away. A bedroom with a king-sized bed that looked like a cloud, windows overlooking the gardens, an ensuite bathroom with a tub large enough to swim in, and connected to it, a nursery that made me want to cry. Everything was perfect. A crib that probably cost more than all of Lucia's furniture combined. A rocking chair. A changing table stocked with diapers and wipes and creams. Clothes in the closet, tiny outfits organized by size, toys appropriate for her age. A breast pump still in its box, the expensive kind I'd looked at in stores and knew I'd never afford. How? I couldn't finish the question. Mr. Dante had me prepare the rooms this morning, Elena said. He told me you had a 3-month-old daughter and to prepare accordingly. She smiled at my expression. I raised 4 children of my own. I know what a mother needs. This morning? My voice came out faint, but he didn't even know. He knew you'd say yes. A new voice came from the doorway, and I turned to find Dante leaning against the frame, his jacket removed, sleeves rolled up. He looked less dangerous like this, almost human, but the intelligence in his eyes reminded me exactly who and what he was. Because the alternative was death. And you love your daughter too much to choose that. That's not giving me a choice, I said, hating how my voice shook. No, he agreed, it's not. But I've found that honesty, even cruel honesty, is better than pretty lies. He moved into the nursery, his eyes on Lucia sleeping in Elena's arms. She's beautiful. She has your eyes. The observation startled me. You can barely see her eyes. They're closed. I noticed earlier, at the courthouse. He reached out as if to touch her, then seemed to think better of it, his hand dropping. Brown, with gold flecks. Unusual, that he'd noticed. That he'd paid that much attention to my 3-month-old daughter in the middle of everything else happening. Sent a shiver through me that wasn't entirely fear. Elena, would you mind? He gestured to Lucia. Of course, signore. I'll put her down in the crib. Let Mrs. DeLuca rest. Elena moved past him, settling Lucia with practiced efficiency, before slipping out of the room. And then it was just me and Dante, alone in this perfect nursery that felt like a beautiful cage. I should explain the rules, he said, his voice businesslike now. You're free to move anywhere on the estate, the house, the gardens, the grounds. But you don't leave without security, and you don't leave without my permission. No phone calls to friends or family without approval and monitoring. No social media, no internet activity that could be traced. You're a ghost until I say otherwise. A prisoner, I corrected. A protected asset. His eyes met mine, dark and unreadable. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. A prisoner wishes to escape. I'm hoping you'll be smart enough to understand that staying is survival. He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne again, close enough to see the flecks of gray at his temples, the faint scar along his jaw. The Constantines are looking for you right now. They have informants everywhere, police, hospitals, social services. If they find you, they'll take you and your daughter, and they'll use you to hurt Marco, to hurt me, to send a message that betrayal has consequences. I didn't betray anyone. You married a traitor. In their eyes, that's enough. His voice softened slightly. I know this isn't fair. I know you're frightened and angry, and this is the last place you want to be. But I give you my word. While you're under my protection, no harm will come to you or your daughter. Can you say the same about anywhere else? I couldn't. He was right. And we both knew it. I looked at Lucia, sleeping peacefully in her expensive crib. Surrounded by luxury I could never have provided. She was safe here, fed, warm, protected. What kind of mother would I be to refuse that because of pride? What do you want from me? I asked quietly. Really, men like you don't do things out of kindness. He smiled. A sharp, knowing expression. Smart girl. You're right. I want something. He paused as if considering his words. I want you to be visible. What? Marco betrayed me, embarrassed me, made me look weak. His voice hardened. My enemies are circling, thinking this is their chance to strike. I need to show them that I'm still strong, still in control, still someone to be feared. He gestured around the nursery. And what shows more strength than protecting the innocent? Than taking in the abandoned wife and child, giving them everything, while punishing the man who wronged them? Understanding dawned, cold and clear. You want to use us, for appearances. I want to show the world that I value loyalty and honor above all else. He met my eyes steadily. Yes, there's a benefit to me. But there's also a benefit to you. Safety, security, everything your daughter needs. We both get something out of this arrangement. And if I refuse to be part of your display, you won't. He said it with absolute certainty. Because you're smart enough to understand that your pride is worth less than your daughter's life. He was right. Again. God, I hated that he was right. How long? I asked. How long do we stay here living like this? Until the threat is eliminated. He checked his watch again. That same expensive gesture. Marco has $3 million to repay and 5 years of service to complete. The Constantines need to be handled. Negotiations or elimination, depending on how reasonable they're willing to be. These things take time. Years. I said flatly. You're talking about years. Possibly. He didn't sugarcoat it. Or it could be resolved in months. These situations are fluid. Lucia stirred in her crib, making the small sounds that meant she'd wake soon. My breasts ached, reminding me it was almost time to feed her again. My whole body hurt with exhaustion, and this conversation, this entire day, felt surreal. I need to rest, I said, because I couldn't process anymore, couldn't make any more decisions. Please. Dante nodded, moving toward the door. Elena will bring you anything you need. Food, supplies, whatever. You just have to ask. He paused in the doorway, looking back at me. For what it's worth, Mrs. DeLuca, I am sorry. You didn't deserve this. No, I agreed quietly. I didn't. He left, and I was alone with my daughter in our golden cage, surrounded by luxury that felt like a lie, safety that came with chains I couldn't see but could definitely feel. I moved to the crib, looking down at Lucia's perfect face. She was dreaming, her small features peaceful and untroubled. She'd never remember this day, never know how her world had changed in the space of a few hours. She'd grow up in this house, with guards and gates and a life I'd never imagined, and I'd do whatever it took to keep her safe, even if it meant selling my freedom to a man more dangerous than any I'd ever known, even if it meant becoming part of a world I didn't understand, playing a role in a game where I didn't know the rules. My old life was gone. The question now was what kind of life would take its place, and whether I'd recognize myself when it was over. The first week passed in a strange blur of exhaustion and hypervigilance. I slept more than I had in months. Real sleep, deep and dreamless, because Elena insisted on taking Lucia for a few hours each night so I could rest. I ate meals I didn't have to cook, prepared by a chef I never saw but whose food was better than anything I'd tasted in years. I showered in that enormous tub, letting hot water wash away months of accumulated stress, and I hated myself a little for how good it felt. The estate became familiar in pieces. The gardens where I could walk with Lucia in a stroller that probably cost more than my car, always with Nico or one of the other guards trailing at a respectful distance. The library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a reading nook that overlooked the grounds. The nursery where Lucia was starting to smile. Real smiles now. Not just gas, and I'd sit in the rocking chair for hours, watching her discover her hands, her voice, the world around her. I rarely saw Dante. He was gone most days, returning late if at all. Sometimes I'd hear his voice from downstairs, speaking rapid Italian on the phone, and I'd catch words I'd learned from Marco's family. Business, shipment, problem. Once, at 2 a.m. when I was feeding Lucia, I saw him in the gardens below my window, pacing like a caged animal, phone pressed to his ear, his face hard in the moonlight. He frightened me and fascinated me in equal measure, and I didn't know what to do with either feeling. It was Elena who told me about the dinner, 10 days after my arrival. Mr. Dante is hosting associates tomorrow evening, she said, organizing Lucia's clothes while I fed my daughter. Important men from other families, some business partners. He'd like you to attend. My hands tightened on Lucia. Why? Elena's expression was kind but knowing. Because you're part of the message he's sending, Kara. The wronged wife, the innocent child, both under his protection. It shows his power, his honor. His trophy, I said bitterly. Perhaps. She folded a tiny dress with practiced efficiency. But better to be a protected trophy than a forgotten casualty. In this world, appearance is everything. I don't have anything to wear to something like that. Already handled. She gestured to my closet. New clothes arrived this morning. Pick whatever you like. After she left, I put Lucia down for her nap and investigated the closet. It had been stocked since I arrived with practical clothes, jeans, comfortable shirts, things suitable for a new mother. But now there were additions, dresses, elegant and expensive, in styles that would fit my post-pregnancy body without making me feel self-conscious. Shoes in my exact size, even jewelry, subtle but clearly real. I pulled out a midnight blue dress, holding it against myself in the mirror. The woman looking back was a stranger, better rested, better fed, wearing clothes that actually fit. But her eyes were still haunted, still lost. Who was I becoming in this place? The next evening, Elena came to help me get ready while Nico's sister, a sweet girl named Gabriella, watched Lucia. Elena styled my hair, applied makeup with a practiced hand, and when I finally looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Beautiful, Elena pronounced. Mr. Dante will be pleased. I don't care about pleasing him, I said. But the words rang hollow even to my own ears. The dining room was on the first floor, a massive space with a table that could seat 20. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over settings that probably cost more than I'd made in a year. Men in expensive suits were already gathered, speaking in Italian and English, their voices carrying the weight of power and danger. Dante stood at the head of the table, and when I entered, every conversation stopped. He looked at me. Really looked, his dark eyes traveling from my face down the dress and back up, and something flickered in his expression that made my breath catch. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying easily. "May I introduce Mrs. Gianna De Luca?" He moved toward me, offering his arm like we were at some society ball. My honored guest. His hand was warm through the fabric of my dress, his presence overwhelming as he led me to the seat at his right hand, the position of honor. The men watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to calculation, and I felt like a deer surrounded by wolves. "Mrs. De Luca," one man said, older, with silver hair and cold eyes. "We've heard much about you, about your situation. Have you?" I kept my voice neutral, the way I'd learned to do with difficult customers at the diner. "Your husband's betrayal was quite spectacular," another added. $2 million. Such greed. $3 million, with interest. Dante corrected softly. "And he didn't just steal money. He sold information to our enemies. He endangered all of us. And yet you protect his wife and child." This from a younger man, maybe 40, with a scar running down his neck. Some might say that's weakness. The air in the room changed, tension crackling like electricity. I felt Dante go still beside me, felt the danger radiating from him like heat. "Some might say that," he agreed, his voice pleasant. "Those people would be wrong, protecting the innocent, punishing the guilty. That's not weakness. That's justice. That's honor." He looked around the table, meeting each man's eyes. "Or do you gentlemen disagree with those principles?" Silence. No one challenged him. "Mrs. De Luca and her daughter are under my protection," Dante continued. "Anyone who threatens them threatens me. I thought I should make that clear, so there are no misunderstandings. It was a warning and a declaration, and everyone in the room understood it. I was his now, whether I wanted to be or not. His to protect, his to display, his to use as proof of his power. Dinner was served, course after course of food I couldn't taste. Conversations in multiple languages swirling around me. The men talked business in careful euphemisms, discussed territory and shipments and problems that needed handling. I sat silently, Dante's trophy, proof of his honor, while inside I felt myself disappearing piece by piece. Halfway through the meal, my phone, the new one Dante had given me, monitored and restricted, buzzed in my clutch. I shouldn't have checked it during dinner, but something made me look. A photo. Grainy, taken from a distance, but unmistakable. My old apartment building, with police tape across the door to 3B. My door. The message beneath it was simple. "We know where you lived. We know where you worked. We're looking for you. Tell Mr. Dante the Constantines send their regards. The phone slipped from my nerveless fingers, clattering onto my plate. Dante's hand shot out, catching it before it could fall further, his eyes scanning the screen. His expression went hard, dangerous, and he stood abruptly. Gentlemen, please excuse us for a moment. He pulled me to my feet, his hand firm on my elbow, and led me from the dining room into a smaller study. The moment the door closed, I broke. All the fear I'd been holding back, all the stress and terror and exhaustion crashed over me like a wave, and I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only see that photo of my apartment building, my home violated. They found it, I gasped. They know where I lived, and they know you're not there anymore. Dante's voice was calm, grounding. Gianna, look at me. He'd never used my first name before. The sound of it in his accent made something in my chest tighten. You're safe, he said firmly. That apartment is empty. You're here, with me, where they can't reach you. Mrs. Chen is fine. Salvatore moved her to her daughter's house in New Jersey 3 days ago. She's safe. His hands came to my shoulders, steady and warm. I knew they'd find the apartment. I planned for it. You knew? Anger cut through the fear. You knew they'd do this? And you didn't tell me? Because you didn't need to know. His voice was harder now. You needed to rest, to recover, to bond with your daughter. Knowing the Constantines were systematically searching for you would have only added stress you didn't need. That's not your decision to make. Yes, it is. He didn't raise his voice, but the authority in it was absolute. You gave me that right when you agreed to my protection. I decide what threats you need to know about and when. That's what protection means, Gianna. I wanted to argue, to rage, to demand my autonomy back. But he was right. Again. If I'd known the Constantines were actively searching, I wouldn't have slept, wouldn't have eaten, would have driven myself into exhaustion worrying. He'd protected me from that, even if it meant lying by omission. I hate this, I whispered. I hate feeling powerless. I know. Something softened in his expression, but powerless and alive is better than empowered and dead. A knock at the door interrupted us. Nico's voice came through. Boss, we have a situation. Dante's jaw tightened. What kind of situation? Marco. He's here, demanding to see his wife and daughter. My stomach dropped. He can't. I don't want to see him. You don't have to. Dante's voice was firm. Stay here. I'll handle this. But I couldn't. Something in me, anger, maybe, or the need to finally confront the man who'd destroyed my life, made me follow Dante out of the study, through the house, to the main entrance where Marco stood between two guards, looking disheveled and desperate. Gianna. He lurched toward me, but the guards held him back. Thank God. I need to talk to you. I need to explain. There's nothing to explain, I said, my voice cold. You stole money? You sold information? You put us in danger. What's left to say? I did it for us. His eyes were wild, pleading. The money, I was going to invest it. Turn it into something real. We could have had everything. We had everything, I interrupted. We had a marriage, a home, a child on the way, and you threw it away for money and her. Valentina means nothing. Don't. I moved closer, close enough to see the dark circles under his eyes, the stubble on his jaw, the guilt and fear written across his face. Don't lie to me anymore. I'm done with your lies. Is this where you want to be? He gestured wildly at the mansion, at Dante standing behind me like a dark angel. With him? A criminal? A killer? You made me a criminal's wife the day you stole from his family. I shot back. At least he's honest about what he is. You pretended to be something you weren't for 3 years. I love you. You don't know what love is. My voice cracked. All the pain of the past months rising up. Love doesn't abandon. Love doesn't betray. Love doesn't serve divorce papers to a pregnant woman in a hospital bed. Marco flinched like I'd struck him. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. So you ran. I felt Dante's presence behind me, solid and steady. You ran to her, you ran from your responsibilities, and now you're running here, trying to what? Get us back? Ease your guilt? I want to see my daughter. No. The word came out flat, final. You signed away that right when you chose Valentina over us. She's my blood. She's an innocent child who doesn't need a coward for a father. I turned to Dante. Get him out of here, please. Dante nodded to the guards, who began dragging Marco backward. He fought, shouting my name, shouting promises and pleas and apologies that meant nothing. The doors closed on his voice, on his face, on the last remnants of the life we'd had together. I stood in the foyer, trembling, as silence fell. You did well, Dante said quietly. I feel sick. And I did. Nauseous and shaky and overwhelmed. His hand touched my back, gentle despite his reputation for violence. Come, let me show you something. He led me through the house, upstairs I hadn't explored, to the top floor where a door opened onto a rooftop terrace. The city sprawled in the distance, lights twinkling like stars. But up here the air was clean and cool, and I could breathe again. I come here when things get complicated, Dante said, leaning against the railing. When I need perspective, I joined him, looking out at the view. Does it help? Sometimes. He was quiet for a moment. You were strong tonight. With Marco, with my associates. Stronger than most people in your situation. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm barely holding on. That's what strength is. He turned to face me, and in the moonlight his features looked softer, almost vulnerable. Holding on when everything tells you to break. You're doing that. You're surviving. Because I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. His voice was serious. You could have walked away that day in the courthouse. Could have taken your chances, hoped the Constantines wouldn't find you, but you chose survival, chose your daughter over your pride. And now I'm your prisoner. Now you're under my protection, he corrected gently. There's a difference. Is there? I echoed my words from days ago. Because it still feels like a cage, he moved closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him in the cool night air. Then let me make it a more comfortable cage. Tell me what you need, Gianna. What would make this bearable? The question surprised me. Why do you care? Because you're my responsibility now. His eyes held mine, dark and intense. And I take my responsibilities seriously. Something in his voice, in the way he looked at me, made my heart beat faster. It wasn't fear. Or not just fear. It was something more complicated. Something dangerous in its own way. I need to know my daughter is safe, I said. I need to know this isn't forever. And I paused, unsure if I should voice it. What? He was so close now I could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, could count the individual strands of gray at his temples. I need to know you won't hurt us, I whispered. That this protection is real, not just another game. His hand came up to my face, his thumb brushing my cheek in a gesture that felt too intimate, too dangerous. I've done many terrible things in my life, Gianna. Hurt many people who deserved it and some who didn't. But I swear to you, on my honor, on my name, on everything I hold sacred, I will never harm you or your daughter. You are mine to protect, and I keep what's mine safe. The possessiveness in those words should have frightened me. Instead, they settled something deep in my chest, some fear I'd been carrying since the courthouse. Okay, I breathed. I believe you. His smile was slight, barely there, but real. Good. Now come inside. It's getting cold, and you need rest. Tomorrow is another day in our arrangement. As we walked back inside, his hand at the small of my back, proprietary and protective, I realized something that should have terrified me but didn't. I was starting to feel safe here, starting to trust this dangerous man who held my life in his hands. And that was more dangerous than any threat the Constantines could offer. 3 months into my life at the estate, everything changed on a Tuesday morning. I was in the nursery with Lucia, 6 months old now, sitting up on her own, babbling and laughing at everything. When Elena knocked softly on the doorframe, her face was grave, and my stomach immediately dropped. What's wrong? I stood, automatically reaching for Lucia, as if I could shield her from whatever news was coming. Mr. Dante needs to see you in his office. Now. She moved forward, her hands gentle. I'll watch the bambina. Go. Dante's office was on the first floor, in the west wing I rarely visited. The door was open, and inside I found him standing behind a massive desk, phone to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. His face was harder than I'd ever seen it, and when his eyes met mine, something in them made my blood run cold. He ended the call abruptly, closed the door. I did, my hands shaking. What happened? The Constantines made their move. His voice was flat, emotionless, which somehow made it worse. They hit 3 of our warehouses last night, killed 2 of my men, and sent a message. They want you and Lucia in exchange for peace. The world tilted. What? They know you're here. They've known for weeks, apparently. They were just waiting for the right moment. He came around the desk, his movements controlled but dangerous. They're offering a trade, you and the child for a ceasefire, and a return to the old territory agreements. You can't... My voice cracked. You said we were safe here, you promised. And you are. He grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at him. I'm not giving you to them, Gianna. Do you understand me? I would burn this entire city to the ground before I let them touch you or Lucia. The ferocity in his voice, in his eyes, should have frightened me. Instead, it made something warm and dangerous bloom in my chest. Then what do? I whispered. We end this. His hands tightened on my shoulders. Tonight, I'm meeting with Constantine himself, along with the heads of the other families. We're going to settle this once and for all. A meeting? That sounds like a trap. It is. His smile was sharp, predatory. But it's one I'm prepared for. I've spent 3 months planning for this moment, building alliances, gathering intelligence. The Constantines think they're strong, think they can demand whatever they want. They're wrong. He moved to a cabinet, pulling out a file folder thick with documents. Marco's been useful, actually, singing like a canary about every Constantine operation he knows about. Every dirty deal, every illegal shipment, every judge and cop on their payroll. I've been feeding this information to the FBI for weeks. When I walk into that meeting tonight, I'll have leverage they can't ignore, and if that doesn't work... His expression went cold. Then we go to war. And I will win, Gianna. I always win. I believed him. God help me, I believed him completely. I want you and Lucia moved to the safe room until this is over, he continued. It's reinforced, fully stocked with its own security system. Salvatore and Nico will be with you. If anything goes wrong, don't. I couldn't hear him plan for his own death. Don't talk like that. I have to. His hand came up to my face, cupping my cheek with surprising gentleness. Because if something happens to me, you need to know what to do. There's money in an account under your name. Enough to disappear, to start over somewhere safe. Salvatore has the details. He'll get you out of the country if necessary. Dante. His name came out broken, and I realized with shocking clarity that I didn't want him to leave, didn't want him to walk into danger, didn't want to lose this man who'd become something I couldn't quite define over the past 3 months. I'll come back, he said softly. I promise you, Gianna. I'll come back. Then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was claiming, possessive, desperate. His hand fisting in my hair, his body pressing mine against the desk. I should have pushed him away, should have remembered that this was my protector, my captor, the man who held my fate in his hands. But instead, I kissed him back, pouring 3 months of confusion and fear and something that felt dangerously like trust into the contact. When he pulled back, we were both breathing hard. When this is over, he said, his voice rough. We're going to talk about this, about us. But right now, I need you to go to the safe room and stay there until I come for you. I nodded, unable to speak, and let him lead me from the office. The safe room was in the basement, accessed through a hidden panel in the wine cellar. It was larger than I expected, a small apartment really, with beds and a bathroom and enough supplies to last weeks. Lucia's portable crib was already set up, along with diapers and formula, and everything we might need. How long has this been here? I asked Salvatore as he settled us in. Mr. Dante had it built the day after you arrived, he said. He's been planning for every contingency. Of course he had. Dante planned everything, controlled everything, protected what was his with the same intensity he used to destroy his enemies. Hours passed. Nico and Salvatore took turns keeping watch while I paced with Lucia, trying to keep her entertained, trying not to imagine what was happening above us. The safe room had no windows, no way to see outside, and the isolation was suffocating. Around midnight, the lights flickered. Salvatore's hand went to his gun immediately. "Stay back." "What's happening?" I clutched Lucia tighter. "I don't know. Could be nothing." The lights went out completely, plunging us into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, dim and red. The sound of gunfire came from above us, muffled but unmistakable. Shouting, breaking glass. The unmistakable sounds of violence. "They found us," Nico breathed. "The Constantines found the estate." Salvatore was already moving, checking weapons, speaking urgently into his radio. "All units report. I repeat, all units report." Static answered him. "Shit, they've jammed our communications." More gunfire, closer now. The sound of the wine cellar door being blown off its hinges. "Get in the back room," Salvatore ordered, pushing me toward a smaller door I hadn't noticed. "Lock it from the inside. Don't open it for anyone except Mr. Dante or me. What about you? We'll hold them off as long as we can." Nico's young face was grim but determined. "Now go!" I ran, Lucia screaming in my arms, and slammed the door behind us. My fingers fumbled with the lock, a heavy deadbolt that slid home with a solid thunk. The room was tiny, barely larger than a closet, with a single cot and nothing else. Outside I heard the sounds of fighting. Gunshots, so many gunshots, and shouting in Italian and English. Salvatore's voice commanding and fierce. Nico's younger one, defiant. Then other voices I didn't recognize, and the terrible sounds of hand-to-hand combat, then silence. Horrible, complete silence. Lucia was hysterical now, her screams echoing in the tiny space. I tried to soothe her, tried to stay quiet, but she was 6 months old and terrified, and nothing I did could calm her. The door handle rattled. "Mrs. DeLuca." A voice I didn't recognize, smooth and cold. "We know you're in there. Open the door and we won't hurt the baby." I pressed myself against the far wall, my hand over Lucia's mouth to muffle her cries. She fought me, her small face red and furious, and I hated myself for it, but I couldn't let them hear her, couldn't let them know exactly where we were. "We can blow the door," the voice continued, "but that would be messy, dangerous for the child. You don't want that, do you?" A second voice, older. "Forget this. We don't have time. Dante's men are regrouping. We're not leaving without them. Constantine wants them both." The sound of something being placed against the door. The beep of a timer. They were going to blow it open. I looked around desperately for another exit, for anything that could save us, but there was nothing. Just walls and a cot, and the certainty that in seconds, men with guns would break through and take us or kill us or worse. Lucia screamed against my palm, and I whispered apologies into her hair, promised her I was sorry, so sorry, for everything, for marrying Marco, for being naive, for bringing her into this world of violence and danger. The explosion never came. Instead, the sound of gunfire erupted again, different this time. Closer, more controlled, and then a voice I recognized, rough with fury. "Where are they?" "Dante." "Safe room back section," Salvatore's voice answered, strained with pain. "Boss, we tried to hold them." "You did well. Nico?" "Alive. Barely." The door rattled again, but different this time. "Gianna, it's me. Open the door." I stumbled forward, my legs shaking so badly I almost fell, and fumbled with the lock. The door swung open, and there was Dante. Blood splattered across his face and shirt, his eyes wild until they landed on me and Lucia. "Are you hurt?" He grabbed me, his hands running over my arms, my face checking for injuries. "Did they touch you?" "No, we're okay." I couldn't stop shaking. "Salvatore, Nico, we'll live." His jaw was tight. "The Constantines won't. Come on, we need to move. Now." He led us out of the safe room, stepping over bodies I tried not to look at. The wine cellar was destroyed, the beautiful bottles shattered and leaking red across the floor like blood. More bodies in the hallway. The house above was chaos, smoke and broken furniture and the sounds of his men securing the perimeter. Dante took us to his bedroom, a space I'd never seen before, masculine and austere, and locked the door behind us. He pulled out his phone, making calls in rapid Italian, while I sank onto the bed with Lucia, finally letting myself shake apart. When he finished, he came to kneel in front of me, his bloody hands gentle as they cupped my face. It's over. What? Constantine himself came for you. He thought he could end this by taking you directly. Dante's smile was terrifying. He was wrong. He's dead. I killed him myself in the foyer. His sons are dead. His lieutenants are dead or in FBI custody based on the information Marco provided. The Constantine family is finished. I stared at him, trying to process. So we're safe? You're safe. He said it like a vow. The threat is eliminated. The other families have already agreed to peace terms. No one will challenge me now, not after tonight. And no one will ever threaten you or Lucia again. Dante. I didn't know what to say, how to express the tangle of emotions in my chest. He kissed me again, softer this time, but no less intense. I know. We'll talk later. Right now, you need rest, both of you. He stood, moving toward the door. I have men to tend to, bodies to handle, police to pay off. Stay here, sleep. I'll be back before morning. Don't leave. The words escaped before I could stop them. Please, just stay for a few minutes. Something in his expression softened. He locked the door again and came back to the bed, sitting beside me. Lucia, exhausted from crying, had finally fallen asleep in my arms. He looked at her for a long moment, then at me. I meant what I said earlier, he said quietly. About us. About talking. I know. My voice was barely a whisper. I think I need to say something first. What? Thank you. I met his eyes. For protecting us. For keeping your promise. For everything. His hand came up to brush a strand of hair from my face. You don't need to thank me for doing what I should have done from the beginning. What do you mean? I mean that somewhere in the past 3 months, you stopped being an obligation and became something else. He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. Something important. Something I would kill for. Something I would die for. My heart stuttered. Dante. I'm not good at this, he continued. At feelings. At vulnerability. I've spent my whole life being hard. Being strong. Being what this world requires. But you and Lucia, you've changed something in me. Made me want things I never wanted before. Like what? Like a family. The words were simple but carried enormous weight. Like a life that isn't just violence and power. Like someone to come home to who doesn't fear me but trusts me. I do trust you. And I realized as I said it that it was true. Somewhere along the way, in this gilded cage, with this dangerous man, I'd found something I'd lost with Marco. The ability to trust, to believe, to hope. I shouldn't, but I do. He kissed me again, and this time it felt like a promise. When he pulled back, his eyes were serious. I want you to stay, not as a prisoner, not as someone under protection, but because you choose to. I want to give you and Lucia the life you deserve. Safety, comfort, a future. But I need you to choose it. Choose me. Dante, I'm still married. To a man who betrayed you, who's currently working off his debt in one of my warehouses. His voice was firm. A man who will sign whatever divorce papers I put in front of him because he values his life more than his pride. That marriage is over, Gianna. It's been over since the moment he filed those papers. He was right. That marriage had died long before I ever walked into that courthouse. But starting something new, with this man, in this world. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely insane. I'm scared, I admitted. Good. His hand found mine, lacing our fingers together. Fear means you're smart enough to understand what this world is. But bravery means choosing to live in it anyway, on your terms. So I'm asking you, what are your terms? I looked at Lucia sleeping peacefully in my arms, then at Dante with his bloody clothes and his intense eyes and his promise of protection and something more. I thought about my old life, the tiny apartment, the endless exhaustion, the loneliness that had consumed me. And I thought about the past 3 months, the safety, the rest, the way this dangerous man had become someone I looked forward to seeing, someone who made me feel seen and valued and protected. My terms, I said slowly, are that this is a partnership, not you controlling me, not me being your trophy or your obligation. We're partners, equals. His eyebrow rose. Equals? In my world? In our world, I corrected. If I'm staying, if I'm choosing this, then it has to be ours. Both of us, building something together. For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then he smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine and almost boyish. Partners, I can work with that. And Lucia comes first, always. Whatever we are, whatever we become, she's the priority. Agreed. His hand came up to touch her sleeping face, so gentle it made my throat tight. She deserves the world. We'll give it to her. And I need time, I continued. Time to figure out who I am now, what I want, what this all means. I'm not ready to jump into something new when I'm barely out of something old. Take all the time you need. His voice was serious. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you, if I have anything to say about it. The possessiveness should have bothered me. Instead, it felt like coming home. 6 months later, I stood in a courthouse again. Different one this time. Different circumstances entirely. The judge signed the final divorce papers, and just like that, I was no longer Gianna DeLuca. I was Gianna Moretti again, free and legally unbound from the man who'd nearly destroyed me. Dante was waiting outside with Lucia, almost a year old now, toddling around with his hand holding hers, her laugh echoing through the hallway. When he saw me, he scooped her up and came to meet me, his eyes questioning. "It's done," I said. He kissed me right there in the courthouse hallway, deep and claiming, while Lucia giggled between us. "Good. Because I have something to ask you." "What?" He set Lucia down, her small hand clutching his finger for balance, and pulled a small box from his pocket. "I'm not good at traditional, and this probably breaks every rule about timing and appropriate relationship progression, but I know what I want. And I've learned that waiting for the perfect moment is pointless. The perfect moment is now, with you. With her." He opened the box. The ring inside was beautiful, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds, elegant and unique. "Marry me," he said. "Not because you have to, not because you're trapped or scared or have no other options. Marry me because you want to, because somewhere in this mess, we found something real. Because I love you, Gianna. I love you and Lucia both, and I want to build a life with you that's more than just protection and obligation." I looked at him, this dangerous man who'd become my safety, this killer who held my daughter with infinite gentleness, this crime boss who'd somehow become the most honest man I'd ever known. "Yes," I said, and watched his face transform with joy. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slid the ring onto my finger, then kissed me again while Lucia babbled happily at our feet. Around us, people stared. Some scandalized, some amused, some understanding that they were witnessing something rare and precious. "I promise you," Dante said against my lips, "I will spend every day of my life making sure you never regret this choice." "I know," I said, and I meant it. Because somewhere between that first courthouse and this one, between fear and trust, between captivity and choice, I'd found something I never expected. A real partnership, a real family, a real future. My old life had ended in violence and betrayal. My new life was beginning with honesty and love and a man who'd proven that protection and possession could become something softer, something stronger, something that looked a lot like forever. And as we walked out of that courthouse together, Dante carrying Lucia, his other hand laced with mine, both of us wearing matching rings that promised commitment and choice and love, I realized that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the darkest soil. Sometimes salvation wears a dangerous face, and sometimes the cage you fear becomes the home you choose.